Everyone, welcome! Today we're gonna be building the best Orcust deck by going over all of the core cards, tech cards, small engines, basically everything you need to know about so we can build the perfect Orcust deck together. Now without further ado, let's just get into it. Now the first thing I wanna say, I have a pretty strong opinion about everything I'm gonna talk about, so if you don't agree with something, let me know in the comments below. I would love to improve my knowledge as well if you know something that I don't. Now the way we're gonna do this is I'm firstly gonna build the perfect core, and after explaining everything, we're gonna add the small engines and the tech cards to it to kind of upgrade it as much as we can. So first of all, we're gonna go with the playset of Gursu. This is the best card for the archetype and the best starter. We also have the 1 to 3 copies of Harp Horror, the 1 Babel, the 0-1 of Orcust, the 1 Skeleton, the 0-1 Bombard, the 0-1 Return, the 1-3 Nightmare, the 1-2 Galatea, the 1 Nungursu, Dingursu, and Crescendo. And now let's go over the card by card so I actually explain what the ratios mean. So first of all, we have Bombard. This card has mainly one use. When you have any other Orcust monster in the hand that you don't want, for example, let's say you have the Nightmare, you get to activate Bombard and then you special summon it. So essentially, if you end up drawing Nightmare plus like Gursu, you mill with Gursu the Bombard special summon Nightmare, and that's how you do different things. Now there's actually one more extra use to Bombard, and I'm gonna talk about it in a little bit, but for now we're gonna move on from it and then we're gonna return. We have the 1 Skeleton. This card revives a monster and it's really good and it's really easy to recycle, and you only need one of it because it's the most important card to interrupt your opponent during our opponent's turn, so you're definitely gonna use it and recycle it constantly. We also have the 1 to 3 copies of Harp Horror. Now here is where things really start to kind of differ from other people's versions, because I don't personally like playset of Harp Horror for sure. I think it's too much. Now between 1 to 2 copies, here's the thing. This card is good because it allows you to special summon from deck an Orcust monster, and you would usually go for Gursu or anything else if you already have the Gursu. Now this thing in particular is good as a 2 copies only if you have a bigger engine and a bigger deck overall. For example, if you go over 45 cards, I would say it's a good idea to add 2 copies of this and maybe 2 copies of Nightmare. But if you want to build a perfect version between 40 to 42 cards, which is what I would consider to be the best, I want to go with one of this, and I do think that this is the best way to do it, because at the end of the day you end up drawing it if you have multiple copies of it, and it's not a good card to draw because you need an extra monster to even send it to the graveyard and link it up so you can use the effect, which is not efficient. For those reasons, I play only 1 Harp Horror. Same thing goes for Nightmare. Playset is too much. 1 to 2 copies allows you to draw it more often, which is again not what I want because it's more so a Garnet. So for Garnet purposes, I'm just gonna play 1 of it. But again, if you have a bigger version, you can bump it up to 2 copies, I would say. And now also we have the 1-1. This is a must-have as a 1-of because it allows you to special summon a banished monster, and this can allow you to return something and also send it to the graveyard to then use it again after you set up Babel properly. Now speaking of Babel, this is the next big card I want to talk about. This is very good because it allows us to activate all of our Orcust cards as quick play effects, which means we can use the Skeleton to bring back the Gursu and send something to the grave, which is very strong. And of course we do play it as a 1-of. Same thing goes for Crescendo. This is an Omni Negate and it's really good if you have a linked monster, so you will definitely need this as a 1-of. Now the one card I don't think you personally need as much is Return. The reason for that is because Return allows you to draw cards, but at the same time you need to play a bigger Orcust engine or send something from the field to the grave, which is not ideal. So let's say you even go Galatea for Return. The problem is you use 2 monsters to go into Galatea, and then you gotta sacrifice it to draw 2 cards because you don't have anything in the hand. Now if you do have something in the hand, that is a great way to use it, but again that makes you want to play more Orcust cards, and as I said, these are a little bit of Garnets that you really don't want to have that much. So the only way I would suggest you make this card work is if you play 2 copies of Galatea, which is possible if you play a bigger deck again and you want to get access to more things. But if you play a second copy of Galatea and you plan on using it, you need more than just 2 targets, of course, the Babel and the Crescendo, which will be the 3rd best target, right? But I don't consider it to be as good, so I'm gonna cut it for now. Now moving on to the extra deck, we start off with the 1 Gursu. This is a must-have, but I don't think you need to play more than 1 of. The only way to do it is if you play multiple copies of Galatea, maybe, which is possible, but again, I don't think it's really that big of a deal because you just recycle it over and over again and summon it from the graveyard with Skeleton. But technically, if it does get banished, it's a good idea to have another one with another Galatea, but this is the only option in which I would consider playing it, and I still don't play it, and I don't feel the need to do that the majority of times. Now as of the Galatea, as I said, I'm not a big advocate of playing a second copy of it, so I'm gonna cut it down to 1. Another good 1 copy to play is Lungursu because it allows you to send something to the graveyard and also reshuffle back your monsters, which is another very important thing for this deck. And the cool thing about it is if you have it also linked to something, for example, let's say you go into another link monster and then you put it into the middle zone, you get to actually target your opponent's link monster and send it to the grave, which is pretty useful. But even without that, you can still make great use of it. And now for the final Orcust card, we have the 0-1 Orcustrion. You don't need to play this necessarily, but this is kind of the boss monster of this deck because you get to reduce a bunch of monsters attack to 0, negate them, and shuffle back 3 Orcust monsters. Now, I don't think it is that strong. It is usable, but a lot of the times you just either don't have 3 banished monsters because we reshuffle them back with something like Galatea as well, or we get it back with the Jingirsu, and it really isn't that big of a deal. So I really wouldn't suggest you play this card, but it's still an okay card that comes up every now and then. It's just not that good. And now that we're done with the core, with one exception, which is the Bombard, I'm actually gonna add the second most important card after the core cards, which would be the Armageddon Knight. Now this card, a lot of people either play it and make good use of it or underestimate it. Now for me, this card is an absolute play set because it allows you to do a lot of great things, or alternatively you can play 2 copies of it if you play a 40 card build. But I'm gonna explain how you can make use of it even if you end up drawing, for example, Armageddon Knight plus Gursu, which means you cannot normal summon one or the other. There's still a way to figure things out from that position, but essentially Armageddon Knight does the same thing as Gursu, just a little bit better, and I'm gonna explain why it's a little bit better in a little bit. But the main reason why I kept Bombard in here is to explain that if you draw Armageddon Knight plus Gursu, you cannot normal summon both of them, and you can go Armageddon Knight, dump the Bombard special Gursu. This way you can fix your problem with the 2 starters in your opening hand that you can normal summon. However, I don't actually think this is the best way to fix it, so I'm gonna cut the Bombard, which I believe to be not that useful. So this would be the actual perfect core you can use with the tech card Armageddon Knight. And let's also add the Foolish Burial because it's technically part of the best cards to use as tech cards, and it's really good because it does the same thing as Armageddon Knight in Gursu, just without normal summoning. So in my opinion, this is the best core you can build with the playset of Armageddon Knight and the 1 Foolish Burial. And now I want to explain the difference between the Armageddon Knight 1 card combo and the Gursu 1 card combo. But to do that, I also need to include the IP in the deck because it's a must-have for this build. And I'm also gonna add SP because you already know this card is gonna be in the deck. It's just super strong. Alright, now first of all, let's go over the Gursu 1 card combo. We're gonna normal summon, activate the effect of course, and we're gonna go for Nightmare. And then of course we're gonna activate the Gursu effect, get the tokens on both player side of the fields, and then we're gonna be able to activate Nightmare as well. We're gonna be going for the Harp Horror, which is the most standard way to do it. And then we're gonna be also using Harp Horror to special summon from our deck none other than the Skeleton, because we already went for the Gursu. And now we're gonna be linking off to our monsters into the Galatea, which is very standard. And Galatea is really important because it allows us to go for Babel. And we're gonna be shuffling back the Harp Horror, keep that in mind. And now we're gonna be setting the Babel, which will allow us to use everything as quick play effects. And now the next step would be to go into the Jingirsu, and that will allow us to attach to it the Nightmare from the Banish Zone, which is very important. And now we can just link off into IP if we'd like, or we can extend with the Skeleton. Now I don't recommend going for Skeleton because this version of the combo right here doesn't allow you to get the Skeleton again once you use it. So we're just gonna go into IP and we're just gonna pass turn like that. Alright, this is the way we do it. And now on the opponent's turn we get to activate everything, so we can go Skeleton, we can go for the Jingirsu. So let's just do that to showcase it. By the way, in this version we do keep the token to the opponent's side of the field, which is a little annoying, but you can get rid of it, it's not that big of a deal. And then you summon the Jingirsu. Let's say you use the effect to send something to the graveyard and you just remove something from their field. Another thing you can do, you can also go Nightmare, you get to then summon the Gursu. So let's do it like this. Then we're gonna activate the Harp Horror, and of course we're gonna go for Gursu, which would be the best way to do it. The other way would be to go for a wand, but this way you get the extra body and you still send the wand to the graveyard. This way you have the wand in the grave and you can also use it to go for any of the Orcust monsters. On top of that, we have the IP to go for Lingursu. Let's say you want to shuffle back, for example, Harp Horror and Skeleton, and then you go wand, bring back Nightmare, link it off, use the effect, repeat, and that would be your turn 1. Now there would be a different version to play this if you have extra engines and stuff, but this would be the best way to do it because it's just the standard way. You get the removal, you get the IP, and I think there's actually a little bit of a better way to do it with Armageddon Knight, so let's go over that part now. Alright, so now we're gonna go over the Armageddon Knight, and we're gonna start by normal summoning it, sending it to the graveyard, of course, the Nightmare, and then we're gonna be activating, of course, the Nightmare, sending to the graveyard the Harp Horror. It's just the standard way to do it, but with one small change. So after we activate the Harp Horror, of course, we're gonna special from the deck the Gursu, and we're gonna get to mill an additional card, and we're actually gonna go for World 1, because then World 1, what it does is allows it to special summon again the Nightmare from the Banish Zone, which will give us the ability to reuse it next turn. Now we're gonna link off any 2 monsters to go into the Galatea, which is just the usual stuff, right? And we're gonna be, of course, using the Galatea, shuffling back the World 1, one, which is the more important thing to do, and I'm gonna tell you why in a little bit. But we're gonna now of course set the Babel, and now we're gonna be going into the Dingirsu, which will then allow us to attach to it the Harp Horror, which is very strong, because then we're gonna again link off these two monsters to go into IP, because we only have access to 2 bodies, right? But the cool thing about it, and the small difference here, is the fact that we have both Harp Horror and Nightmare. So now that we pass turn, during our opponent's turn, you can actually play it a little bit differently. And here's what you can do. Because you have access to both Nightmare and Harp Horror, even if one gets negated, you can still mill the skeleton. For example, let's say your Nightmare gets negated and you don't mill skeleton. What you can do is you can activate Harp Horror, space summon to the field the Girsu onto the field, which gives you an additional body, which is already better, and then you get to send the skeleton again. And now let's say if both of the effects actually ended up resolving, for example, you go into Nightmare as well, and you get to send to the graveyard even the World 1 just to prepare it for next turn as well. So as you can see, Armageddon-Knight provides a way better setup than just Girsu. Alright gamers, now that I explained everything about the core, let's move on to the small engines and tech cards. Now the first one you could add is reinforcements of the army, because it just searches Armageddon-Knight. That's an additional starter. It's overall great and pretty useful. And now the first engine that I want to talk about is gonna be the new Nightmare engine, which would be with Goblin and Mermaid. Essentially Mermaid, Goblin is not exactly necessary, but it's a really cool card because it helps you solve the problem of having to normal summon both Armageddon-Knight and Girsu, because it allows you to get an additional normal summon. But the more important card is actually Mermaid, because it allows you to discard one and space summon a Nightmare monster, which gets you access to Orcust Nightmare super easily, even without any engine in your hand. Moving on, let's talk about the Fiendsmith engine. This is obviously a great option because it's self-efficient and it also allows you to link up pretty easily. So you're gonna play the Engraver, the Desiree, the Lacrima, basically everything here. You're also gonna of course add the Luri, and of course gonna play also the Moon of the Close Heaven. This is gonna be everything you're gonna need for this one. You're gonna have to leave a lot of extra deck space for it, but it's definitely worth it in my opinion. Now another great engine you can use is gonna be a small Kashtira engine, because you're gonna play the Fenrir with the Unicorn, the Feud Spell, and Board, and 4 out of 5 cards give you a special summon and a search, which is incredibly strong. The only card you don't want to see is Board, of course, but you know, it's still a good card that you can use and get another body. The engine is really good here because it allows you to get multiple bodies to work with. This way you can go into Moon, you can go into the Mermaid eventually, and you can get so much going with that. Another great engine to include is gonna be a Bystial engine, and there are 2 ways to play this. Either you're gonna play Magmamut, Druisworm, and Bowdrake for hand traps, or you're gonna also include the Saronir, the Double Lubellion, and the Regain to get a little bit of a bigger engine. And the main benefit of playing a bigger engine is the fact that you get Regain, and every turn you're gonna banish something and then you're gonna return it and draw a card. So essentially it gives you +1 every turn, most likely. Now I wouldn't say this is the most incredible thing ever, because sometimes you actually want your Orcust monsters to be banished to use them with Longirsu, Galatea, and even Dingirsu, and Regain is sometimes gonna be a little useless in my opinion. So what I would suggest you do is just remove the Regain, the Lubellion, and also the Saronir. Just play the 1 Magmamut, Bowdrake, and 1 to 2 copies of Druisworm, and you're good to go. Now the next engine I really want to talk about is Horus, and I do believe that this is one of the best engines you can play for 2 reasons. Number 1, it gives you the ability to get extra bodies or Xyz summon. The other reason is because it allows you to return some of your cards that you don't need in the hand back to the deck with Imseri, and it ends up being pretty useful. You essentially get to fix your hand a little bit. Now I do play the playset of Imseri with the 1 Happy and 2 King Sarcophagus, because I found out that the majority of times King Sarcophagus on its own, it's actually not very good. It makes you want to discard valuable resources that you would usually use, and for that reason I decided to just rely on Imseri a little more. Now if you want to play Horus, you're gonna want to add some extra deck monsters. I would suggest you go with something like Hope Harbinger plus Photon Lord. This is completely fine. Or also add the Numeron Dragon and the Draglubion if you do find the space for that, even though I very much don't find the space for it, as you can see. So at the very least, just play 1 Photon Lord and cut the reds, because Photon Lord is really valuable if you go for it as your first play, because you get to play around Nibiru really easily, and that's very helpful. Now the next engine is one that I tried out very recently in my Master Awakening series, and it's Mekk-Knight. And even though it actually gets you a direct search in Girsu, I still don't believe it's a good engine. Let me explain why. First of all, if you want to play it, you're gonna want to play playset of the Nightfall, 2 copies of Blue Sky, and of course the 1 of Indigo, the 1 of Red Moon, and the 1 of Yellow Star. And then any of the Link monsters can be played, but if you're playing Morning Star, make sure to also add some World Legacy cards, maybe the Succession for Monster Reborn. Now the 2 problems I have with this engine is the fact that number 1, you need to prioritize going second, especially because of Blue Sky. And the second issue that I have is the fact that the moment you activate any Orcust effect, you cannot use any of them because they're all light monsters, and it feels so horrible. So even though they can directly search Girsu, it's still not good enough unless you play a going second strategy, which would be significantly different than this version. You can still play them for fun though. And the final engine we're gonna talk about is gonna gonna be the good old Phantom Knights, and by far this is gonna be the most complicated engine in my opinion. First things first, let's talk about ratios. You're gonna play the 1 Wing, the 1 Fog Blade, the 2 copies of Ancient Claw, the 2 copies of Silent Boots, the 1 copy of Thorn Scales. Although you could play a second copy of it, I really wouldn't suggest you do that. And of course the 1 Rusty Bardiche with the 1 of Shady Brigadini, which is gonna be your extender. And the Rusty Bardiche is gonna be the most important card. That would be the main reason to play it in an Orcust build. Now why is this card good? Well, first of all, you can link summon it even after you lock yourself. It also allows you to get additional extenders and even a negation, and on top of that, when you summon the Ingursu during your opponent's turn, you get to activate his effect and destroy an additional card. So these are so many great effects and so many reasons to play it. However, the one problem I have with this engine is the fact that you need to play more cards in your main deck because you're playing so many Phantom Knights that are kind of just garnets and you want to keep in the deck. After doing some testing, I found out that between 46 to 51 cards, it ends up being great with the Phantom Knight cards because you don't draw your garnets so often and you end up playing more good cards. A very good decision that I made was to play Placer of the Walls of the Imperial Tomb because this card allows you to not only get a Horus monster but also return a card back to the deck. This way you can return some of your Phantom Knight garnets and fix your hand a little bit. It also allows you to play a third King Sarcophagus and even another Horus monster, and that could end up being useful for more bodies as well. But to be honest, the Phantom Knight Orcust build is significantly different from the other versions, so if you want to see it, let me know in the comments below and I'll make a separate video about it. For now though, let's return to the 32 cards I believe you should definitely play in Orcust, and from here I would suggest you just play the Maxis, the Ash Blossom, the Imperms as well, and even add the Cold Bites and maybe even a Crossout if you'd like, or without it, it doesn't really make a difference, and this would be an amazing main deck. Now for the extra deck we have a whole bunch of options, so let's start first of all with the more important card, which is gonna be the Chaos Angel. Since you're playing Bystials and also Engraver, it's really easy to use either Gursu or Armageddon Knight to go for a level 10 Chaos Angel and banish something. You're gonna catch your opponent off guard a lot of times. Also, other great options for you to choose would be Typhon because it's a generically good monster, a Paluzzo to set up some early negates, or Access Code to finish off your opponent. Either of them work great, it's up to you what you wanna play. And the final link monster I wanna briefly mention is Topologic Bomber Dragon. This card could be great because first of all, it's a dark monster, which means even if you lock yourself, you can still summon it. And the second reason is when a monster is special summoned to a zone link monster points to, you get to destroy all monsters in the main monster zones, and you can also summon a monster to your side of the field as well, which means you can wipe out your opponent's field completely whenever you'd like. Although it seems kind of OP, to be honest, it's not the most incredible thing a lot of the times because you also have a field and you don't want to lose it. But yeah, this is pretty much everything I know about Orcust. Let me know if there's something that I missed on mentioning. I would say these are the cards that you need to play the majority of times, and this would be the version that I would build and I believe to be the best. If the video was useful and enjoyable, make sure to like, subscribe. Also comment below what other decks do you want me to cover like this, because I honestly love making content like this and I would like to make more of it. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.